All right, guys, a lot tonight with the State of the Union address. The president's going to address taxes. But I'm going to tell you right now, this whole narrative, it goes way beyond punishing the rich. And I think it's part of it is an attempt to right the injustices of yesteryear through savings caps and taxes on inheritance. Maybe not available, let's face it. 50 years ago, certain people couldn't buy a house. Right? So I see this all as part of that whole thing, using envy, even the hatred of the rich, to unleash a whole torrent of new taxes. But listen, it's not a new ploy. And I'm telling you, torchbearers, you better beware, because taxes are the kind of beast that once you turn them loose, you can't leash them again. And I want to give you an example. Case in point, 1966, United States Treasury Secretary Joseph Barr, he puts out a report, 155 high-income households pay zero federal taxes. Zero! I mean, this thing caused such an uproar. By 1969, members of Congress, they were receiving more letters about the 155 than the Vietnam War. So what happened? Of course you know what happened. A new tax was created that became the alternative minimum tax, right? Now, this tax, well, it's been amended a whole lot of times in recent years, but to give you an example of how insidious this thing became, remember the number 155? A couple years ago, it was going to hit 33 million people. Even as it stands now, 4.5 million people, mostly middle-class earners, will be hit by this tax that was supposed to reel in 155 people. Now President Obama wants to go after the IRAs because there are 300 super wealthy people like Mitt Romney. And wow, they've got more than $25 million in a retirement program. And to make the program fair, well, ultimately, it's going to be capped $3.4 million, and you should be able to live off $200,000 annually, right? I mean, I suppose any more than that, and you're just simply greedy. How about the irony of it all? You go back to 1966, those wealthy families earned $200,000. That put them at the top. Right now, let's face it, guys, a family in New York City will barely make ends meet. So, Hillary, a lot of irony here, and there's a lot of moving parts to what I talked about. One, I think the president might feel like because it was so unfair for certain people 50, 60 years ago that if your grandmother was able to buy a house and give it to you, it's unfair that my grandmother wasn't. So you should be paying full taxes on all of this. And I get where the president's coming from, but why punish you and your grandmother for racism or something that was involved in the banking industry? At the same time, this is going to deter people from buying houses, from starting small businesses. This is the craziest idea I've heard in a long time.
Oh, I agree, Charles. This is just absolutely ridiculous. And in terms of these IRAs and having limitations, the wealthy, they don't really pay. The very wealthy, those billionaires, find a way not to pay any taxes. So putting these caps on are kind of ridiculous. It's just really berating the topic even more.
Paul, a cap on an IRA, it just seems ludicrous to me that 10 years from now, 3 million won't be what it is now. 20 years from now, 3 million won't be what it is now. Other than a gargantuan money grab and some other factors, why even put it out there?
Well, look, there's a principle involved here. I mean, the great Congressman Jack Kemp used to say, what you tax, you get less of. What you subsidize, you get more of. And
so they want less savings.
Crazy to tax savings and investment. This is a disastrous policy. We need fairer taxes, tax system. There's no question about that. But this is insane.
What do you think about it, Scotty?
Well, it's a lot easier to sit there and tax people that are going to be dead soon or already dead because they don't need their votes anymore. When it comes down to people in politics, that's usually what they're for. And so it's
well, Chicago, you need them, but they know how to get them.
Well, in most cases, you don't need their votes. But the truth is, this is all about going after the people that they consider owe things, that they don't necessarily need the money. My fear is once they've depleted all of this, are they going to go after maybe the future spending? Hey, guess what? You have a college degree. You have a chance of making more money in the future. I'm going to go on and tax you now.
I'm going to tell you exactly what the next move is after this. Taxing assets. You have a sculpture at home that's worth $2 million. We want you to pay 1% tax on it every year, even though it doesn't give off cash. That's the next goal because we're building this gargantuan welfare utopia. And here's the honest truth, Matt. No matter how much we tax the rich people in this country, it's not enough to pay for all of the generous programs that we would like to put out there.
Exactly. And you, like you said earlier, it may go after the rich initially, but it always trickles down to the middle class. And the politicians, they have this mindset that if we tax more, it brings in more revenue and helps us. No, by taxing more, it can actually lower consumption. And at the bottom line, you may not actually bring in that much more money. So at the end of the day, they're really hurting themselves. It's going to hurt the economy. It's really nuts.
It's never worked. Now, by the way, the estate tax isn't just a rich people problem. Soon, it's going to be a killer for the rich and non-rich alike. Let's say, okay, I want to give you an example. Let's say that your mother, and I was trying to talk this with Hillary. Let's say your mom leaves your house and it's worth $250,000. You sell it for $300,000. Your tax now would be based on a $50,000 gain. But if President Obama gets his way, you would have to consider that your mom and dad paid $50,000 for the house. So your tax would now be based on a gain of $250,000. That is a great way to soak in the dough. And of course, exact justice, like I said, for people who may be in the best, couldn't buy those houses. So here's the thing I want to talk to you about on this, Heath. Double taxation on inheritance, just the idea that, I mean, the home was a cornerstone. Again, I don't think any of these things will go through, but the idea that it's being pitched to the American public as something to consider, then why would I buy a house after such a tax is put in place?
It would be very hard to. And you know who ends up really getting squeezed in this is the middle class. So we're talking about this. The rich will find some sort of loophole to get out of this, right? And these benefits that are supposed to be meant for these lower income people, that only creates this like backward wealth effect. We talk about that a lot. So the benefits aren't even really helping the lower income people. That savings that they're supposed to be putting away, that little income that they're making, that's not helping. So who ends up paying? The middle class. Those people that want to go out and buy homes. Those people that want to go out and have their first starter home. That's not going to happen.
I took these notes today, and this really blows me away, because the president has two things he can do tonight. Essentially what he's saying is that we're so far apart, me and the Republicans, that I'm not even going to put together a proposal that makes half-ass sense, right, that maybe we could come to common ground. But I got to tell you, in 1997, right, Bill Clinton's last 2 years in office, he put out 57 policy proposals. 33 of them passed. This is passed with Newt Gingrich and company. 33%. So far, President Obama, to this year, in the State of the Union, has brought up 209 different calls. Only 64 have become laws, the lowest since Ford. Paul, help me out with this. I got to understand, why wouldn't the president even try to put something out there tonight that would make sense, that would say, okay, don't tell me you're trying to find common ground with these crazy ideas you're throwing out.
Yeah, if you want to make sense, politics is not the way you go about it. This is a typical Washington dance, and those of us who live in Washington, D.C., we see it all the time. What he is doing is he is putting out his proposals for tax reform, which is he wants more money from taxes. Mitch McConnell and John Boehner, they have said, look, we're willing to do tax reform, but it's going to be tax neutral. We're not going to have any big increases so you can spend it on your crazy programs. And so what's happening is that we're starting the negotiations tonight, and that's what's happening. And eventually, I think we will get some movement toward a fairer tax system, because when you see Google paying 3% corporate taxes, that's just a crime, when the only people paying full taxes, corporate taxes, are small businessmen.
And oil companies. All right, real quick.
I adore your
optimism.
I adore your optimism, but unfortunately, I think this is just another showing game, and you could do a drinking game and be more successful tonight watching this.
Well, a lot of us will be drinking while we watch this. Hey, what about this? Paul went from a liberal to a conservative in just 30 minutes. I can't wait for the rest of the show. Hey, Neil Cavuto, he's going to have a whole lot more on President Obama's tax hikes proposal in this rest of the State of the Union speech. Remember, you've got to watch it right here. It begins at 8 p.m. live right here on this channel. Hey.